Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. I'm really happy to have you here with us today. My husband Dan, this is Dan, and I are heading up to an area that we're doing some logging on, and I just wanted to show you, give you an update on some of the other things that we have going on the ranch over the next couple of months.
It's looking way better.
Yeah, it is. Looks great. I just can't believe how much more open it is up here. So how long did this take you? Just clearing this section right here?
Didn't take me that long, about 10 hours probably.
Holy cow, that's incredible. Amazing what a piece of machinery can do. Okay, so this is an area that we logged, I think 5 years ago, hey? 5 or 6 years ago?
2017.
2017. So how long ago was that?
7 years ago.
7 years ago. So we did a lot of the logging here, but our long-term goal for this piece of property was to convert it into some more pasture because we don't have a lot of pasture on our property. So I'll take you down to the edge where our hay fields are and kind of show you what we do have right now. But we wanted to convert this area into some pasture and also some hay. We're going to see if we can grow hay up here as well because we don't have a ton of hay land on our property either. So what Dan's been doing is clearing it and starting to rip out stumps, which is something that you have never done before. And he says it's fun. Yeah. I wanted to show you one of the big stumps that he pulled out yesterday. It's huge. And then one of the other things we're doing, you can probably see the smoke along here, is he's been pushing everything up into piles. We call this burning slash here in this area. And I don't know if it's called the same thing in other places, but putting all the roots and the stumps and everything into big piles and then burning them. So we've been doing that over the last, I don't know, couple of weeks because we have some other areas up the mountain that we've cleared as well. So anywhere that's kind of plateaued like this, because we live on a mountain. So the plateaued areas we're clearing and hoping to turn into pasture land. But this area right here is what we're working on right now. So check out this stump. Isn't that massive? So how long did you say it took?
It took me about an hour.
It took about an hour. Oh, I guess they can hear you because you have a mic. I don't have to repeat everything you're saying. So what Dan is planning on doing at this point is buying, what's that, the big tool? A
root rake.
A root rake? What is that? Can you explain that? Because I didn't know what it was.
It's like a blade, but it's got teeth that stick down about a foot. And then as you drive along, it just rolls up all the big roots and the rocks and leaves the dirt behind. So then what do you do with that? That's when you make these big slash piles. Then you pile it and burn it. And then
just about drop the camera.
Level it all out and then harrow it so it's loose soil, and then we'll seed it.
So that is really exciting. I cannot wait. We'll walk you all the way to the end of the area that we're going to be turning into a meadow here. And then we have an idea over this way. This was Dan's idea. He was showing me this yesterday because there's one little patch of trees, whoops, right here. And in behind that, he was thinking of putting another one of the bunkies, like the bunkie we have by the main house, just because this is such a private, beautiful area up here. And down over this way, you can see in behind is where our hay fields are. So we'll take out a few of the trees just to open up the view to that, but we're going to leave most of them as a kind of a barrier between the two areas. So it would be nice and private and quiet and beautiful. One of the things that we have tried to do with clearing areas of our property is to leave a lot of the forested areas in between the benches. But we are doing some more logging in 3 or 4 weeks here, where we're going to be clearing out some more trees, especially around where the farmyard is in our house, because we live in the middle of the forest, as you can see. This is mostly fir. And we also live in a really arid climate in the summertime, and we have been having, since 2017, forest fires basically every year. I know lots of places are experiencing the same thing. So we want to create a barrier between the main farm area and the forest itself, so that if forest fire were to come through this area, the farm area would be protected.
You want to just go down here?
Sure, yeah, let's go down this way. It is so warm out, well, relative. For us, it's so warm out. It's above freezing today, and it's supposed to be for the next week. So I kind of think spring might actually be here. I suspect that we will have no snow by the end of the week, which is very exciting. Okay, so this is that forested area where I'm taking you here that I was just showing from up there. And down below it, oh look, got deer tracks in here, moose tracks in here. What else? Probably coyote. So down over here, this is what we call the north field, in beyond the trees. I've taken you down into that area before. So this is where our hay field is, along here. So we've put in posts to have a fence. We want to have a lot of cross fencing on our property so we can move the animals around and have them kind of isolated to certain areas so they're easier to find in the summertime, but also to separate them off from the hay field. So down here is where our hay field is. That looks like some nice firewood right there, hey? This big dead tree. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Are you gonna fall that one, or are you gonna leave that one for the loggers to fall?
I'm just asking him if it has any worthwhile wood, but it's kind of curved, so I don't know. I don't know if he can get logs out of it or not. If not, we'll cut it up for firewood.
That would be handy. So one of our other motivations for wanting to leave these forested areas in between is because it provides great protection for the livestock. As you can see, there's no snow in here underneath the trees, and they also use it in the summertime to protect them from the hot sun. So we definitely want to leave all these in here. Oh, we have a good view up to the top of the mountain from here. I never noticed that before. So our property goes up to the top of this ridge. Where we're looking at it from here doesn't really show kind of how steep it is, but it's really, really steep. So we're going to be clearing a few more of the trees out of here just to create some space between the trees, just to help with the whole forest fire protection thing. The woodpecker hole, it's amazing how strong their beaks are. Wow, look at that one, hun. That is a gorgeous tree. I love these big old fir trees. So one of the things that's happening in this region is it's being attacked by something called the fir beetle. So you've probably heard of the pine beetle before. BC is really infested with it, and the fir beetle is now becoming a pretty big issue too. And you see this big, old, beautiful tree, and if you look up, it looks healthy, it's green and all of that, but one of the indicators that it does have a beetle infestation is the bird holes, because they actually can hear the bugs in. And so this is woodpecker. Then they peck through the bark here and get the beetles in underneath the skin, the bark. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, and look up there, hun.
I know. All the big ones are leaking.
All the big ones are leaking. Oh. That's so sad. It's such a gorgeous big tree. We would really like to leave as many of the big old fir trees as we possibly can on our property, but anything that has obvious infestation, we'll take out. Well, that's a cool old tree. That one looks like it's kind of on its last legs too, doesn't it? Oh my gosh. Do you know what age of trees that the fir beetle goes after?
No, but they do seem to like the big ones.
Yeah, they do seem to. Yeah, because a lot of these smaller trees don't have any obvious damage to them. One of the things that Dan and I were talking about over tea this morning was how long it takes to get anything done on a homestead. And one of the main reasons why it's hard to kind of finish projects is because you are really dependent upon the weather. So when you have an opportunity to log, for instance, you have to do that when the weather permits. If you want to haul gravel, you have to do it when the weather permits. If you want to cut hay, you have to do it when weather permits. So you're really dependent upon the weather and have to do things when you have to do things. Dan calls it, it's like we're putting out fires all the time. That's what it feels like sometimes. And so in the case of the renovations we're doing in the basement, our goal was to actually finish those completely. And then we spoke with the logger, and there was a certain period of time that he was able to come out and do the logging, and Dan had to get his bulldozer finished because he bought a old bulldozer many years ago and it needed a whole bunch of work. So he had to do all of that. So we had to stop the project in the house, go out and do that in the shop. So it can be a little bit discouraging sometimes because it feels like nothing's ever being done, or finished all the way to the end. But we'll get there, right? It just takes time, lots of time, lots and lots of time. Okay, so we're over on the south side. It's a little windy today, of that area that we were just showing you. And this is a little bit of a better view of the lower hayfield. So the barn and the house are all down over that way. And then this is our hayfield right up over here. And then this way, we'll go up onto the ridge a little bit so that you can see a little bit better. This is what we're going to be leveling out and turning into some more pasture land. So there, okay, this is actually a better spot.
I really like this spot.
Yeah, I like it too.
It's nice. It's easy, like you said this morning, it'd be easy to imagine this as its own little homestead.
Yeah.
This little clearing, I like the shape of it.
Yeah, you can do a surprisingly large amount on a smaller piece of property like this.
But it's pretty flat, it's got the spring above.
Yeah, there's actually a spring.
It's kind of a nice, it's kind of a teardrop shape.
It's really pretty. It's very quiet.
And then
up here.
You could put either a cabin right here and clear this out and have the nice view, or you could put a cabin, I was thinking, by that little stand of trees I would leave, and then we could just fence around it so the cows can't get in.
Mm-hmm. So we'll keep you updated as this project progresses, and hopefully, kind of the plan at this point is to have it all cleared and leveled this year, at least this area. Like I said, we have some other areas we're going to work on up there as well. And we won't be able to burn all the slash piles that Dan will collect up from this area until next winter, but we'll have it all cleared and leveled, hopefully, hey?
That's my goal.
That's the goal.
I'd like to have it cleared and leveled and fenced.
Yes.
Ideally, and have the slash piles built so we can burn them next winter.
Yeah.
My truck's like a, I don't know.
It's got a personality. We're gonna head down.
I'll wait for you. Go ahead.
We're gonna head down to the house and I'm gonna show you how to start your own Kombucha Scoby just from a store-bought kombucha. So we'll head down and do that. All right, friends, we are going to start our own Kombucha Scoby. So if you cannot get a Kombucha Scoby off of a friend and you don't want to order it online, this is a really inexpensive way to start your own Scoby at home. I experimented with this around a year and a half, 2 years ago or so. And if you're on Instagram, I do have a highlight saved if you want to go check that out, but I'll run you through the whole process here as well, of course. We are going to start with a GT's raw kombucha, just pure raw kombucha, a mason jar, 2 black tea bags, and we're going to use a half a cup of sugar. We are going to start by just making a sweet tea. I'm going to fill this quart up about halfway with boiling water and let that tea steep and add the sugar as well so that can dissolve. So we're going to take half a cup of sugar here. So we're going to let this steep. I'm just going to mix in that sugar on the bottom. Basically until it cools off. You can take the tea bags out after 10 minutes or just leave them in until this is cooled off. Fastest way to do that if you live in the north is to stick it outside on your freezer, which is what I always do, or you can put it in your fridge or in your deep freeze. Either will work just fine if you want to speed up the process, or you can just let it come to room temperature on your counter. That works too. So what we're going to basically do here is we're making a sweet tea that you would normally make to start a batch of kombucha with a Scoby. And once this cools down, we're going to add our raw kombucha to it. So we want to make sure this is cooled down to room temperature though, because if this is hot, it's going to kill all that good bacteria that's in here. In this kombucha, all of the nutrients from those tea bags and the sugar have already been consumed by the bacteria. So we want to activate that again and get those bacteria really going again so that they can create the Scoby colony of bacteria that goes on the top. It sounds really gross, doesn't it? And it looks gross too, but it makes a really awesome fermented tea. So just bear with me if you have not made kombucha before. It is really, really good. I would recommend before you actually start trying to make it yourself that you do buy. I find the GTs taste the most like a home brewed kombucha. It has a little bit more fizz. for the most part, but it has the most similar flavor between a homebrewed kombucha and a store-bought one. Okay, so I'm just gonna plunk this outside. Actually, I just realized it is above freezing out there though, isn't it? It's well above freezing now. It's already 5 degrees above freezing, so I'm actually gonna throw this into the freezer. 30 minutes should do it. So while that's cooling down, let's go down to the grow room and I'll show you what I have started down there. I've actually been thinking about starting some tomatoes. Maybe I mentioned this when we were outside, but starting some tomatoes and definitely some peppers now, a little bit earlier than I normally would. Because it's so warm and I suspect we're going to have an early spring, I might be able to get a head start on growing some early tomatoes. I have found over the last couple of years that starting things early, especially if we have an unseasonably cold spring, which we actually have had in the last couple of years, causes the plants to experience too much stress and actually slows down their growth, and it defeats the purpose of starting them early because I just end up with slow growth at the beginning of the season. So I've been pushing it back a little bit further into the spring when I start my tomatoes, but I'm definitely going to give a few early starts a try. Maybe we'll get some of those planted. Welcome to my grow room. This is my happy place this time of year because it smells like earth in here and it's quite humid and there's growing things which make me so happy. I'm just going to show you a few of the things that I have started. Okay, where should we start? Oh, these cuties. Let's start with these. These beautiful little seedlings here are snapdragons. So I have an entire tray and a half of snapdragons here, and they are just looking fantastic. Really, really happy with the snapdragons. This is another favorite here. These are the beautiful little lemon balm. Aren't they gorgeous? They're one of my favorite herbs to grow, at least early in the season like this, just because I think they're so pretty. They are fairly slow growing, so don't be discouraged if they're not taking off. But once I get these out into the greenhouse under some natural light, they'll just poof, grow really fast. I tried some really old lavender seed, and I'm happy to say that I do have some little baby lavenders coming up here. I just sprinkled the seed on top fairly liberally in order to hope that some of the seeds would come up, and they did. I'm starting to get some little true leaves on that little baby here. So once these are a little bit more developed, I'll separate them out into separate cells. But I'm happy about that. Our little celery have germinated as well. And I have a couple of new things here that I have not grown before. These guys are needing a little water. These little guys here are fennel. And so that's a first for me as well. And then down right here, I have a bunch of sweet alyssum started here. These guys are so cute. Oh my gosh, look at those sweet little pansies. You see that? Oh, they're so cute. That's another new one. I started lots of things that I haven't done before, actually. Some sage, parsley, and I'm not sure if you can see these little tiny, tiny babies in there. They just popped up this morning. This is oregano. I started my oregano way late this year, so hopefully it'll get going. Sometimes it will overwinter. And we had such a mild winter this year that I'll probably have some out in the garden still. And here's another new one that I started this year. The germination wasn't fantastic on these little babies, but I'm kind of excited about it. We also have some little strawberry babies. So these are strawberries started from seed. And as you can see, the germination wasn't fantastic on this because these cells didn't have any come up. So I'm just going to wait until these are a little bit bigger and then I'll divide them out. I have some kohlrabi down back over here that's looking great. Look at these little snapdragon babies. These make me happy. They're so beautiful. Last year was the first time that I did snapdragons, and I am sold on them. They're so lovely. So I know conversations about potting soil have kind of been a hot topic over the last couple of years here on YouTube, and there's a reason for that. There's been a dramatic change since 2021-ish or so in the quality of potting soil. So I have been using this stuff down here, SunGrow Professional Growing Mix, for years with great success. I use this to make my soil blocks with, which we'll be doing. Maybe we'll do some of those and start our early tomatoes and early peppers in those today. But yeah, so anyway, I use it to make the soil blocks. I use it for starting all my seeds and everything with no issues. This year has been kind of interesting because the seedlings are doing great. They're starting okay, but I have tons. I'm just gonna pull all these out here because there's I've already weeded these. I'm having to weed my seeds here, but so I have some weed seeds growing in my potting soil this year, which has never happened before, ever. So that's interesting. Like I said, the potting soil is working just fine as far as the seedlings are growing well and everything looks healthy, but I am getting some weed seeds in it, which is interesting. Oh, I'm so excited. I can see some onion babies coming up. Let me see if I can get in here and show you. Can you see the little babies growing up here? This one's called a calce. It's a really big onion. This is a first for me too, as far as this variety of onions, but we have all kinds of babies poking up. That's very exciting. So I'm just gonna give these fennel a little water because they're the only ones that are looking a bit dry. This is what I use for watering when my seedlings are really small. It's just a sprayer. It's actually a chemical sprayer for lawns and gardens that I get from Princess Auto, and I love this because when the seedlings, before they have actually germinated, especially for really tiny seeds, there's a spray. I don't know where I put my spray nozzle because I have it off. That's just a fine mist spray, which I love. And then I use this one that has a little bit more flow to it once my seedlings get larger like this. Once my grow room is packed full, and we will be at that point soon, we'll eventually get to the point where all of my trays will be this way, so they can fit extra trays in here once all the tomatoes and the peppers and the all the cole crops like the cabbages and the kale, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all of that get in here. This will be jam-packed, and at that point I usually switch over to bottom watering, and that's where you actually just usually take one of these out and pour your water in through the bottom and bottom water that way. I have just always done it this way, and it works for me. So with these, they're just air pressured up. One thing that I need to get in here, I actually should go grab one, is a fan. I always keep a fan in my grow room to help the plants have a little bit of environmental challenge to deal with. It helps the stems be a little bit stronger if they have to fight against a breeze a little bit. And I find that it does actually make a significant difference. So everybody else is looking well watered. Really want to make sure these guys all are, because they are in the early stages of growth. I started around 800 or so, give or take, onions, which is great. And several of you were asking questions about how our garlic and our onions and our potatoes, things that are down in the root cellar, how they held up, and if we ended up running out of those during the pantry challenge, and we did not. We still have lots of onions left, lots of potatoes and carrots left in the root cellar, which is fantastic. And then we always get lots of questions about toilet paper and paper towel and things like that. And we actually buy our toilet paper from a commercial supplier, a company that supplies the hotels and things like that, because we can usually buy it in bulk that way. And it's not significantly less expensive than buying it at the grocery store. It's just easier for us to just buy big boxes of it than and keep it stored up a little bit than to have to buy the amount of toilet paper that we go through all the time. So I just wanted to address that because it's come up a few times and I keep forgetting to mention it. So now for fun, let's make a couple of soil blocks and plant some tomatoes. I'm so excited. So I've got a tray here, and I find it's really helpful to add one of these sturdier plastic trays in underneath these floppier ones. Just gives it more support, especially for making soil blocks where I'm going to be pushing into here. I'll show you in a second. I'm just going to run this upstairs and give it a good wash, and wash it with a little hot soapy water with some bleach in it, just to sterilize it in case I have any fungal growth or anything in here, or spores left over from last year. That's always a really good idea. And I'm going to do the same thing with my soil blocker. So we're going to go, this is what a soil blocker looks like. This one's a really old one. I'm actually missing one of the plugs that puts the little indentation in the block to plant the seed in. I know I can order that piece, I just haven't gotten around to it. So we're gonna go do that. And then we're going to mix up a little bit of soil. All I'm using is my regular potting soil with a lot of water. I'll show you what we're looking for as far as the amount of water to add to it when I come back down. I really don't have a ton of workspace here in my grow room. One of the things we've talked about doing is putting a counter all the way along this back wall here. There's only about 4 feet, maybe, yeah, around 4 feet of space between the shelves and the wall itself, and then have it so that I can flip it up against the wall so I can move around in here when I'm not needing to actually do seed starting or soil block making in here, because this tiny little, let me show you, this tiny little workspace I have here is challenging to work on, but we're gonna make it work. So I have my clean tray here and my soil blocker. I think I'm gonna use one of these lids to mix up my soil and my water. My potting soil has dried out quite a bit in this warm room. So I'm gonna go add some water to this. I normally make all of my soil blocks on my kitchen table. So I've never tried to make them down here before, and this is just not gonna work. So we're gonna bring all of this upstairs and make some soil blocks on the kitchen table. I'm just gonna let this soil sit for a few minutes because it was so dry, and make sure all that water really absorbs in there. Then we'll pick out some seeds to start. We have the good standby California Wonder red candy cane. That's one that I always plant. It's beautiful. Hungarian yellow wax. King of the North is a new one for me. Jalapenos, paprika peppers. This is very exciting. I didn't have very many of my paprika peppers grow well last year. And the year before I grew them and then I smoked them and made my own smoked paprika, and it was out of this world. So good. So I have some plans for growing peppers this year because the first and second year that I grew them in my high tunnel, or maybe it was only the first year, I can't remember. I had one really excellent year and then a couple of lackluster years. So I'm going to go back to what I did the very first year that I grew my peppers. You'd think repeating what works is a good idea, but once we get to the point of actually planting in the high tunnel, I'll explain all of this to you. But I'm hoping to get a really good crop of these so that I can do that again. And then I have a I don't know how to pronounce this here. That one, we're also gonna do that one as well. But I think I am just gonna start with a few. I have a bajillion different kinds of tomatoes here, but I think I am going to start with some that my friend Ash sent me. Let me show you. These are mostly all new to me from Moonglow Gardens. If you are looking to buy tomato seeds, I would highly recommend Moonglow Gardens. They are in Alberta and in the north. She's in, I think, a zone 3 as well. I'm in a 3B. I think she's in a 3. But anyways, she grows amazing tomatoes in her region. So she sent me Crushed Heart, Sleeping Lady, it's a dwarf plant that stays 3 to 4 feet tall, one of the most prolific varieties we have ever grown. Ooh, that's exciting. Chupa Chups, this is a fun variety to grow with great colors and flavor. Deep Space, Golden Canary, Duckling, Tim's Taste of Paradise, Kaleidoscope Jewel, and Marina's Praise. So I think I'm gonna try starting a bunch of, or at least a couple of each of these varieties today. That's very exciting. Ash gave me a code for you guys for free shipping, and that is LMR 2024. And I'll put a link to Moonglow Gardens down in the pinned comment and in the show notes for you as well. But I'm excited about this. What else should we start? Arbosan, that is a really good beefsteak tomato. It's the one that I grow every year. Beefsteak tomatoes don't usually do super well here just because we have cold evenings and they need a lot of time to get nice and big. But this is one that I grow every year, so we might start some of those. I have to be careful or I'm gonna get carried away, which is what usually happens when I'm starting seeds. I usually start way too many. I grow around 180 or so pepper plants and 180 tomato plants every year. And last year was probably my best year at actually restricting myself. I think I did 200 of each. So I only had to give away or compost a few tomato plants, which is awesome because I don't like to waste. Okay, let's see where we're at with our soil here. Give this a good mix. I think we're almost there. I do talk about this in my seed starting course, and it's something that I didn't practice this time around, and that's rehydrating your soil in the evening before you're going to use it, because it does take some time for all of that soil to become evenly moistened and there not to be dry spots. So what we're looking for is being able to squeeze out a bit of water like that in order for these soil blocks to actually hold together. You don't want it to be absolutely saturated, so it's pouring water when you squeeze, but definitely a little bit. When I am making soil blocks, this will probably be the smallest batch that I've ever made. We usually make hundreds of them at a time, just because it's kind of messy, but we're just gonna make one tray of them today. So I'm gonna bring you down nice and close so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so what we're gonna wanna do now is take our soil blocker and rock it back and forth. Oh, sorry, the camera's jiggling. Rock it back and forth like so, move it over, do it again. And you want to do it until it's packed really solidly into your soil blocker. Grab your tray, hold it down nice and tight, and squeeze. And as you're squeezing, you want to push down. And there you go. So I'm going to get this whole tray filled up, and then we'll get them planted. One thing that I will say is if you have arthritic hands or any kind of hand issues, this is pretty hard on the hands. So I usually get some help from young folks that don't have arthritis in their hands to be able to help when I'm doing large amounts of these. I have some tags here, my trusty China marker there. Do want to do some Manitoba bush, Old German, one of my favorites. We'll save on that. Do some early sun golds, pink brandywine. I love pink brandywines. We'll start with the fancier ones. Excuse me. From Moonglow. These ones are the Kaleidoscope Jewel. So what does she say about the Kaleidoscope Jewel? Loads of pink slicers, really pretty. Ash's seeds usually have excellent germination, so I just use one seed per cell, or in this case, per soil block. So those ones are Crushed Heart, which I've grown before and I do love. Chupa Chups. This is a really good idea, Ash. She's put a QR code on all of her packages, so you could just scan them to get more information about the seed. She has a really nice website too, actually. Growing tomatoes is one of my favorite things. Deep Space Chocolate Paste Tomato. That sounds intriguing. Golden Canary Yellow Paste. I love canning with a mix of tomato varieties. It just makes the flavor of sauce or anything that you're going to make so much more rich. Tomato soup, oh my gosh. I just shared my tomato soup recipe over on my blog. If you want to go check that out, anyone who's on my email list would have already gotten a link to it. But I love putting even cherry tomatoes into homemade tomato soup. So delish. I'm going to leave starting kind of the bulk of the tomatoes that I usually use for canning. So those are the Arbosan, those are the Manitoba, and the Amish paste. I'm going to wait another couple of weeks before I start those. These ones are all experimental ones, so if I end up with the cold spring and growth gets stunted or anything like that, it would be a loss, of course, but not as much of a loss if I lost all of my main tomatoes that I want. Some of these are dwarf tomatoes, so I could even put those in big pots on the deck. Dwarf tomatoes are great options for if you live in an apartment. That one's a dwarf one, and it's called Duckling, and it's an orange slicer. That's a cute name. And we have two more to do. Tim's Taste of Paradise, a small, sweet, small cherry tomato. So for cherry tomatoes, I am only going to be planting Sun Gold and then these ones, these Tim's Taste of Paradise. We'll use 2. I'm going to plant some extras too because I always give a few to my mama and sometimes to my mother-in-law. She didn't do her greenhouse last year. So I'm going to have to do an entire other tray for the peppers because this one is now filled with tomatoes. I'm just going to finish off these last 8 with some Amish paste. Actually, you know what? No, changed my mind. I'm going to put some Old Germans. Isn't that a gorgeous tomato? Oh my goodness. We'll do 4 of these guys. Let's try some high mowing ones. These ones are Mountain Vineyard F1 tomato. And that's one I have not tried before. I got these seeds last year, so I'll double up, put a couple seeds per soil block here. I love high mowing seeds too. They're also excellent. I think I actually have a code for them. If I do, I'll put it down in the show notes for you. It's probably for 10% off. It's my guess. High mowing are excellent seeds and they are in the US. Okay, so I just do want to quickly show you what I do here. So these soil blocks are fairly well saturated. So I'm just going to sprinkle some dry soil on the top here, just because it makes it easy rather than doing it when it's wet. And then when I bring these down to my grow room, I'll just mist them with my sprayer that I have downstairs to moisten the top of this, and then they'll be good to go. And these will stay. These won't need to be watered for a bit. I do find that my seedlings do really well started in soil blocks like this. And then obviously I'm gonna have to pot them up. Some people call it up potting. I call it potting up into larger containers. And we'll show you how we make those because we actually make them out of newsprint, the pots that we put these into once they are, usually when they have about 3 to 4 sets of true leaves, and we'll start potting them up. And we actually only pot them up once because we put them in a nice big container. So there we go, ready to go down to the grow room. So what we're gonna do here is remove our tea bags and we're going to add our kombucha right to this. The whole entire thing. Okay, so you are going to want to take your jar and cover it with a cloth like so. My kid's older brother just showed up here and they're very excited. Okay, so we're gonna put a ring on. So we're going to take this jar and we're going to put it somewhere for around a week. And at that point, you should see a SCOBY start to form. Give it 2 weeks for the SCOBY to get nice and big, and I will show you the next steps of what we're gonna do at that point, but I'll tell you just in case you missed that video. So we're going to double the size of this. So we're gonna get a half-gallon jar. We're going to add all of this to it and basically repeat the process we just did. So another half a cup of sugar, another couple of tea bags, making sweet tea, adding both of these to it. And within about 4 weeks, we will have a SCOBY and kombucha that we can actually drink. So we'll go through the whole entire process over the next little while of making flavored kombucha, how we make it fizzy and all of that kind of stuff. But for now, we're just gonna stick to actually making our own SCOBY. And that is going to be it for today's video. We're actually heading into town for a birthday lunch and I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that you enjoyed today's video and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.